Hello, my friends. Welcome back to A Common Touch of Fantasy. My name is Paul, and we're doing an October wrap-up today. We are going to wrap up everything that I've read during the month of October. This is going to be a long video, so strap yourself in, and the format's going to be a little bit different. There's going to be text on the screen for you guys to read while I talk about the books. So let's get right to it and see how this goes. So the first three things I want to talk about are the first three books in the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher. Now, I did a review on the Furies of Calderon already, but I'm going to talk about the whole series up to the halfway point at the moment. This is a fantasy series, epic fantasy, that has very much a large cast, and it really features a coming-of-age story of a one boy that ends up going to like this mystical school and like learning about who he is and the people around him and getting involved with the politics in the realm. It's a very much a politics-centered fantasy where there are different sides, different individuals vying for power, trying to take over the First Lord of Alera and to become the leader of everyone. During this time, there are outside raiders, people coming against them, and a lot of conflict between the different houses and different individuals in this story. I think if you like epic fantasy, I think you would really like this. It's narrated by Kate Redding. I listened to all of these on audiobook, and I highly recommend them on audiobook. Check out Overdrive at their library. They were available on my Overdrive, so they might be on yours as well. The first book, though, does have some violence against women. Now, after that first book is done, you don't really see as much of that in the other two books after that, which I'm very happy about. I liked each one of these. My favorite was the second one, which is more of a centered story around Tade, the young boy, going to this like school, becoming a cursor, which is kind of like an assassin type spy person, and just focusing around what he's doing in that city and all the things that are going on in that city. The third book is more of an army versus another army type of book where there's a lot of battles. So far, I'm really enjoying this series, and I would recommend it to others. The next thing I want to talk about is nonfiction. I read 5 nonfiction things. There was one thing I didn't get to, which was the Macho Paradox. That was on my TBR. I am still reading that, so maybe I'll finish that for next month. But Asking for It by Kate Harding is a great book about the realities of rape culture in America and how it is really involved in people's lives, where it has permeated everyone's thinking, and we don't even really realize it. It's a lot about how people view women and how we view the victims of sexual assault. One eye-opening thing about this book was how little individuals get prosecuted for rape. Very small amount. Highly recommend it for those wanting to learn more about the subject. Hope in the Dark is a religious book about believing in God when everything around you is falling apart, when the worst possible things could be happening to you, to still have faith in God and to still, trust in His plan. This one's by Craig Groeschel, and it's a very short book that was decent. The Invisible Orientation, An Introduction to Asexuality by Julie Sondra Decker. This is basically what the title says, an introduction to asexuality. It goes into what it is, what it's not, the different types of asexuals, the different spectrum, where people fall on them, the terms for all of those. And I really wanted to read this because the more I'm around people, the more that people are being identified as asexual, and I just kind of wanted to learn more about it so that I could understand my friends and the people I meet more. We Should All Be Feminists. It's a very small book based off a TED Talk by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, and this is basically just an introduction to feminism, which I really liked. And what was important about it to me was that it was talking about how we have to fix male uh, masculinity, toxic male masculinity, along with feminism, and because they both coincide with each other. And I also read Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers Who Changed the World. This is a book about 50 women that changed science, and it's a kid's book, but it was fantastic. Amazing drawings. Rachel Ignotofsky. Check that one out at your local library. Moving on, we have The Murders of Molly Southbourne by Tade Thompson. This was a horror novella from Tor.com. I really liked this a lot. It really made me think about the psychology of having to kill yourself over and over again. Basically, when Molly bleeds, if she doesn't take care of the blood right away, the blood will end up turning into like a doppelganger of herself, and that doppelganger will try to kill her. So throughout her entire life, even as a young kid, these other Mollys are trying to kill her and attack her. At the beginning, it is her mother and father that's protecting her, but later in life, she has to do it herself. And as she gets older and older, it gets more complicated and more complicated, and it's kind of a block to her relationships in the future, because she has this issue, but she's trying to overcome them. And what's great about the story is it sets up at the very beginning this very ominous scene that you know is going to be later in the book. So you're reading the entire book to find out kind of like what is going to happen to Molly at the end. Very attention grabbing. I thought it was fantastic. I really need to read more by Tade Thompson. So I read 2 Stephen King books. The first one was The Outsider. This one was from this year, which I really liked. It was like a supernatural murder mystery. Basically, a young boy is brutally killed, and the descriptions in this are gruesome, so I'll just give you that warning. It is very much a large cast of characters. Each character is very realistic. It's a very character-based story, but it's driven by the plot. So it's all about them trying to find out who murdered this young boy. They think it's this one man. He's like the pillar of his community. He's a coach. He has an alibi, though, but he has all of these witnesses saying that they saw him after the murder, covered in blood. So basically, it's like he's in 2 different places at the same time. So this book goes from a rather typical murder mystery type of story, police procedural, and turns into more of a supernatural, the root of evil type stuff. And I thought it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it. I haven't read a Stephen King book in a long time, and I thought this was good. Now, on the other hand, I did not care for The Gunslinger, the first book in the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. I'm hoping that the other books will be better. I listened to this on audio, and it just didn't really do it for me. Basically, there's this gunslinger. He's in this other world, and he's trying to find and kill this dark guy with like that has powers, and this guy is a gunslinger western type dude, and I just couldn't get into this. The atmosphere is very it's melancholy, and it's very sad, and I don't know, it just didn't really do it for me. It's very much a world building type of story, and I wasn't too interested in the background of the gunslinger, and there was a large portion of the book dedicated to that. Once it got to the end and King decided to tell us more about this world and how it was set up, it made me more interested in reading this. So that's why I'm going to read the next book, because if more of the interesting world building is in the second book and less about, honestly, the gunslinger, then I'll probably like it. But this one I did not care for very much at all. Lockwood and Company. This is the second book in that series. It's The Whispering Skull by Jonathan Stroud. I love these middle grade fantasy horror books. Basically, there is this association that goes around and does things with the ghosts in London, and there's many different organizations that they're competing against, and they have to try to get rid of all these ghosts. In this world, ghosts are very popular, and they're very They're just everywhere, basically. So our story has, these three young individuals, because everyone that can see ghosts and interact with ghosts and stop ghosts are basically young. So there's like the guy that's in charge, that's very mysterious, the girl that's very driven and she wants to like prove herself, and then the very smart individual that does research. And I just like these books a lot. They're very well written. You can tell that Jonathan Stroud is a British writer. And they're just very amusing. It's very mystical, whimsical. I really like these books a lot, and I hope to continue to read them. Check these out if you want kind of like a mild horror fantasy book that is middle grade, that's written at a young adult level, maybe even more so. It's just well-written books. All right. I reread The Collapsing Empire by John Scalzi in preparation for The Consuming Fire by John Scalzi. Both of these books are very much political-based books. They're all about keeping power or taking power away. And so we have very different individuals trying to take over this empire, pretty much have a coup against the Emprox, that is with an X at the end. And it's all about trying to outwit, outmaneuver your enemies and just try to figure out what they're going to do and be 2 steps ahead of them. And I'm so glad that I reread the first book, because honestly I couldn't remember much that happened. And that happens to me a lot with these political intrigue books. A lot of times with books I can hang my memories on scenes, but with these political heavy books I can't really do that as much, so I have to reread them a lot of times to refresh my mind about what's going on. And I'm so glad I did, because A Consuming Fire just throws you right back into it. And I'm not used to that with Scalzi, because with the Old Man's War books, they were like further in time. They weren't like exactly after the previous book, but with these ones they are. And I like both of these. I thought they were great, but there's just something missing about these books, and I don't know what it is, to be honest. I think that Scalzi is trying so hard to be snarky and have this great banter with individuals, and it's just like an emotional dissonance between me and the books. Like, there's not those characters in this story that emotionally I feel connected to. And I feel like that where I like to compare these to Wager's books, the Behind the Throne books. I think it's called the Adriana War series. With those books we have relationships that are friendships that you can hang your emotional resolve on. With these books you don't have those relationships as much, and I'm hoping that as the third book comes out that friendships will become more important to this series, which I think it will, because he kind of hinted to that at the end of The Consuming Fire. Robert Galbraith just put out her new mystery book, J.K. Rowling, and this was fantastic. I loved it. Robin and Strike are like 2 of my favorite characters. They're trying to figure out their working relationship when each of them has like feelings for each other, but they don't want to tell each other, but also they have like significant others themselves, and it's just very a complex situation where a lot of the plot is about them not talking and communicating properly. But in most books that's really annoying, but in these books it just works, and I don't know why it just works. Maybe because we're just in their heads so often, and we get both of their perspectives on each other, where it works really well. I thought this was really good. The plot is very messy at times, and it's very intricate, and I don't know if it was pulled off completely in the end, but it was still pretty good. I still enjoyed it, and I definitely recommend it. It's probably, I would say, out of all the books I read this month, this one was probably my favorite, just because I love the characters of Strike and Robin just so much. Robin's like one of my favorite characters in all of literature. The Armored Saint by Myke Cole. This was really good. This is another Tor.com novella. I I thought this was fantastic. Basically, it's in this world that's oppressed by religious individuals and their beliefs, and if they say something's wrong, then they can basically kill a bunch of people. And this young girl, she stands up for herself, she stands up for her friends, and then a bunch of things happen where the rivals, these individuals that are a part of this organization, come after the town, and then craziness ensues. And I thought it was just fantastic. If you like young women that are standing up for themselves, going against the rulers of the land, the patriarchy, things of that nature, check this out. A lot of fun. It was more feminist than what I thought it would be, because Myke Cole's this big guy that writes military fantasy, but this is very much a feminist viewpoint type of fantasy book, and I thought it was really good. I'm definitely going to be reading the sequel next month. That's how much I like this. I went and bought the sequel right away almost. Okay, last few here. We have Nevermoor, The Trials of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. Everyone on BookTube loved this book last year, and they were right to love it. It was fantastic. It's a coming-of-age book. This girl is cursed. She gets blamed for everything that happens badly in her world, and she gets taken to this other world so that she can then join this mystical society. And there's a lot of characters that she gets to meet, and it's all about the writer letting the audience figure out the world as the young girl is figuring it out. And I thought it was a fantastic book. Middle grade fantasy. It's one of the better books that I've read from middle grade, and I think that this could be an extremely popular series if it gets into the right hands. I think that this could be made into a great movie. I think if more kids were reading this would just blow up, and you would see these books everywhere, like in the Walmarts and Targets and stuff. Great series so far. I'm looking forward to reading the next book in this coming month. And then lastly was a book I didn't really care for. It is The Girl in the Locked Room by Mary Downing Hahn. And this is a very young book. It's for young readers, middle grade on the younger side. And it's a ghost story, but there's these weird science fiction elements about alternate realities thrown into it that just did not work. Like the mix between horror and sci-fi in this, it did not work at all. And basically a girl moves to a new town. Her dad is going to restore this old house. The old house is haunted. She figures it out. She meets a friend. Her and her friend go and investigate the house and the ghost. And what's interesting about the story, though, is you do get the perspective of the ghost throughout the entire story, which is pretty cool. But it just did not work for me, and I was really upset about that. So that is it for me for the month of October. I had some great reads, one of the best months I've had all year with my reading. I'm looking forward to November, though. I did not read two things from my previous TBR that I'm taking over to November, which was Blackwing by Ed McDonald and the Macho Paradox, the nonfiction book. So I'm carrying those over to my TBR video that I should be putting up tomorrow, probably tomorrow evening, as I put out a November TBR. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will talk to you guys later. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow me on social media. Thanks.